सो हम स्टार्ट करने जा रहे हैं लेक्चर नंबर 4, ठीक है, विच इज ऑन लॉजिकल डेटाबेस डिजाइन एंड द रिलेशनल मॉडल. सो द assumption is के we are done with the conceptual modeling, right? वो क्या थी? The entity relationship diagram and the enhanced entity relationship diagram. So before we start the relational model, that entity relationship diagram should be completed. ठीक है, पूरे के पूरे जिस पोर्शन को हम ऑटोमेट करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, ख्वाह वो एक पूरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है या कोई डिपार्टमेंट है या जो भी उसका स्कोप है, उस स्कोप के अंदर रहते हुए जो ऑब्जेक्ट्स हैं और जो इवेंट्स हैं, दे हैव बीन आइडेंटिफाइड, राइट, दे हैव बीन मॉडल्ड, their cardinalities have been detected, the maximum and the minimum cardinalities, ठीक है, and the supertype and subtype relationships, they have been detected, they have been modeled, and also the constraints in the subtype and supertype relationships, they also have been modeled, okay, disjointness and completeness. So once we are done with that, it means that the conceptual modeling is complete. Then next step is to convert that conceptual model into another form, a new model, and this model is known as the relational model, okay, or it is also known as the logical database design. And in this design, we'll try to model the entities and their attributes in the form of tables and their fields, okay, and then those tables, they would be implemented in the database, ठीक है. So start करते हैं, चलते हैं इसकी तरफ. So this is the agenda: properties of relations, properties of candidate keys, then some constraints and transformation of the conceptual models into relations. This would be discussed in this lecture. So the first concept that we are going to discuss is a relation. ठीक है, so far we have studied relationship in the entity relationship diagram, which was the logical association between two entities. Now this relation is a new concept. It's a totally different concept. A relation simply is a table, okay. In the relational database systems, a relation is a table, a two-dimensional matrix of rows and columns, okay, that's a table. But there are some specific attributes or specific characteristics which are required for a table to be a relation, okay. So इसे हम ये कह सकते हैं कि each and every relation is a table, because basically a relation is a table, but every table is not a relation. So for a table to be a relation, there are some checks, okay. If those checks are met, only then we can refer a table as a relation. And what are those checks? वो हम one by one देखते हैं. The first is कि उसका एक unique नाम होना चाहिए. So within that scope, two tables, two relations, they cannot share the same name, okay. Each and every relation has to have a unique name. Secondly, each and every attribute value has to be atomic. It means that we cannot have more than one values in a cell. If there are more than one values in a cell, that would be a multi-valued cell, and that is not acceptable in a relation. We can have multiple values in a table cell, but we cannot have multiple values in a relations cell. इसकी मिसाल हम देख लेते हैं. For example, we have a table and its name is, for example, student, right? And this student table has got some attributes like, for example, student ID is its identifier key and name. And for example, we have cell number, okay? So for example, there is a student with an ID 1 and the name is ABC and he has a cell 033 and some number, okay. Now there is no multiple values in a cell. Okay, मैं आपको समझाना चाह रहा हूं कि मल्टीपल वैल्यूज का एक्चुअली मतलब क्या है, राइट? मल्टीपल वैल्यूज का मतलब है, फॉर एग्जांपल, if we change this row, for example, we are storing multiple cell numbers against a student, और यहां पे for example there is a student who has got more than one cell numbers, and that cell number is added over here. For example, that is comma separated, and we add a new cell number over here. Now this is a multiple value within a cell. Multiple value means more than one values for one instance. Okay, so if there are more than one values for an instance in a cell, then that cell would be a multiple valued cell, which is not allowed in a relation. So for a relation to be a relation, it is necessary that all of the cells throughout that table, they should be having simple single values. No multiple values is allowed in a relation. The third requirement is that each and every row should be unique. A relation cannot have 200% identical similar rows. It is not allowed in a relation to have two similar rows, even if all of the values within a relation are same. For example, there is a row with same name and let's assume same cell number. Even then, ID's value would be different. Okay, so we can have 99% same values, but at least one value has to be different. Okay, that is a must. If 100% values of two rows are same, that is not a legal thing for a relation. Okay, so for a relation, it is a must that all of the rows, they should be different, right? Okay. Another characteristic is that columns, they must have unique names. So it's very simple thing. Two columns cannot have same name. Another requirement is that the order of columns should be irrelevant. What does this thing mean? Irrelevant. Sequence of columns does not matter. That is not something which is relevant. Okay. इसका मतलब ये है, if you change the sequence of columns where this relation is physically stored, your operations, they would not be disturbed. For example, you have written some operations on a table. So if you change the order, there would be no effect on the output. Okay, इसकी मिसाल यूं है कि for example, you have an Excel sheet. Okay, for example, this is an Excel sheet. Okay, and for example, there are three columns A, B, and Z, and there are some values in A and B, and Z's value is calculated based upon these two values. For example, this is the case. Okay. In this particular scenario, is it a table or a relation? It would not be a relation. Why? Because if we swap this order, this result, इसके ऊपर इसका असर होगा, ये सेम नहीं रहेगा. Similarly, if I move this A from here to here, again इसके ऊपर इफेक्ट पड़ेगा. So ये relation नहीं रहेगा. So for a relation, it's a must that columns order should not matter. Order of the columns should be irrelevant, right? And similarly, the last attribute is order of the rows that should also be irrelevant. Okay, the order of rows also, that is not relevant in a relation. It means that values, they are not dependent on the ordering. If you change the order, the values, they are going to stay. Okay, number one. And number two, there would be no impact on the operations which are applied on that particular relation. Okay, so we can safely say that all of the relations, all of the tables, they are relation, because it's a first requirement for a relation, that it's basically a two-dimensional matrix. Okay, so every relation is a table, but all of the tables, they are not relations. For a table to be a relation, there are these these 6 checks which are to be met for a table to be a relation. कैसे irrelevant? ऑर्डर ऑफ रोज का मतलब है कि अगर मैं फ्यूचर में इन दो रोज को स्वैप कर देता हूं, 2 को इधर ले जाता हूं, 1 को इधर ले जाता हूं, तो रिजल्ट पे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ना चाहिए. नहीं पड़ता है. जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि यहां पे कॉलम के ऑर्डर्स को हमने जब चेंज किया तो हमारे एक रिजल्ट पे असर पड़ा. इसी तरह से वी कैन हैव ऑपरेशंस वेयर इफ यू चेंज द रोज ऑफ ऑर्डर ऑफ रोज, द रिजल्ट्स गेट चेंज्ड. ओके, सो वो फिर रिलेशन नहीं रहेगा. रिलेशन के लिए ये मस्ट है कि उसके ऊपर जो ऑपरेशंस परफॉर्म हो रहे हैं उनके रिजल्ट के ऊपर देयर शुड बी नो इम्पैक्ट इवन इफ यू चेंज द सीक्वेंस ऑफ द रोज or columns. Okay, clear? Every relation is in first normal form. There is a technique known as normalization that inshallah we'll learn later on. That technique is used to find out if there is any discrepancy in the relational structure, and there are different forms which are achieved during that normalization. There is first normal form, then second normal form, and then third normal form. So all of the requirements of first normal form, they are already met if you have relations instead of tables. Okay, so if you have all of relations in your structure, then it would mean that you have already achieved the first normal form. ये हम तब ज्यादा समझ आएगी जब हम इंशाल्लाह first normal form को देखेंगे. So there are two new concepts: degree of relation and cardinality of relation. So far we have learned the degree and cardinality of relationship. Degree of relation simply means the number of columns of a relation, and the cardinality of a relation simply means the number of rows in a particular relation. So these are two simple